Horizon Hobby is one of the largest companies in the RC industry. They're involved in RC airplanes, helicopters, cars and boats, and own popular brands like E-Flite, Hangar 9 and Spectrum. Chances are you've tried some of their products firsthand. Have you ever wondered how those products get developed, tested and released to the market? Joining us today is a true legend in the air modeling world, Ali Machinchy. As a world-class pilot, field marketing manager and product developer for Horizon Hobby, Ali's fingerprints are on some of the most exciting releases, such as the E-Flite Vipers, the Hangar 9 Carbon Cab, and the iconic OV10 Bronco. In this conversation, Ali gives us a behind-the-scenes look at how Horizon Hobby develops their products. He also dives into the newest release from Hangar 9, the Aermacchi MB-339, the first turbine jet airplane from the company. But that's not all. Ali also leads the Horizon Air Team, a group of about 100 awesome pilots they sponsor, and he's going to tell us what it takes to join this top-notch team. Beyond his role within Horizon Hobby, Ali's flying skills span the entire spectrum of the hobby, from jets to small foamies, from scale models to gliders. In our chat, he opens up about his latest favorite sports jet, the elite Aerosports BDX. Whether you are new to RC or you are an experienced pilot, I think you will get a lot of insights and inspiration from this conversation with Ali Machinchy. I hope you enjoy it. All right, Ali, thank you so much for taking the time and welcome to the Skybound RC podcast.
Thanks for having me, and no problem at all. Good to be here.
I wanted to start by getting a better idea of your role at Hangar 9. You are currently a product developer at Hangar 9. Can you tell us what a product developer does?
Sure, yeah. Product developer is actually probably my secondary role at Horizon. I have probably about 3 or 4 roles that I dabble in, but my main 2 are field marketing manager, and then secondary is product developer. Currently, I'm the only full-time developer for Hangar 9. And as far as what do I do and what does that involve, it varies depending on the different product developers. We have, I think, around about, say 7 or 8 full-time air product developers on the team right now, and their roles are adapted to their skill sets. With me being the only one on Hangar 9, I pretty much do it all. I go from the ideas basis right the way through to design, testing, which is the development, the marketing side, so the videos, the photographs and so forth for Hangar 9. And that's where I come in to play with the other brands, particularly like E-Flite, say. I help a lot on the testing side, the video, the marketing, the photographs and so forth. I wouldn't say, probably nearly all of the videos and so forth, anything flying right now. So on the Hangar 9 side of it, it's pretty much just me. I do all of that.
When you and your team are working on a new airplane, what are the main challenges to get a new project from idea to release? What are the main challenges? What are things that people might not realize are not that simple in the process?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, coming from my background of a retail aspect to the manufacturing side, I had some idea of what was involved, but only a tip of the iceberg. And in that sense, there's challenges that really still sort of, I wouldn't say surprise me anymore, but I understand a lot of people don't acknowledge or understand fully what's going on, is those that are to do with a big corporation like ourselves. So much to talk about. A smaller corporation, for instance, won't have the same sort of responsibilities we would in terms of licensing, in terms of profit, cost, in terms of compliance testing, and all of these things sort of interwoven together. So to give you an example, if I was just like, say, Ali Machinchy models and I wanted to go and make a Cessna 172, I'd go, you know what, I'm going to make a Cessna 172, and I think it's going to be a cool idea. I think it will sell enough to keep Ali Machinchy models happy. Let's go, let's do it. Being Horizon Hobby, as I represent, as I work for, we have to factor in licensing. Cessna is owned by Textron Corporation, which are probably one of the most tightly controlled organizations that we work with in terms of licensing, in terms of what they want for every aircraft we sell, in terms of what they want in terms of control over what we make, how we make it. So yeah, that factors a lot into it. Things like compliance testing, electronic compliance testing, something I wasn't aware of until I really started developing a lot for Horizon. Crazy things like I understand a receiver and a transmitter, they emit RF, they have to go through electronic compliance. And I understand even some big radio brands don't do compliance testing, which, without going into the weeds, there was a very big hobby company that hit some really hefty fines because they didn't comply to the regulations in Europe and America. I get that. What I didn't get was things like electric retracts. They emit RF, or lights. They emit RF. So every one of those components has to go through the same rigorous compliance testing as you would do a receiver or a transmitter. And I know for a fact that the other model companies don't do it. They don't comply. They sort of just swim between the gaps and go ahead and don't do that. We being Horizon, and it's an internal thing, but also a big target. We have to go through all of that, and that factors into when we're developing something. Okay, can we make it without licensing? Do we have to pay a royalty? Do we have to go through X, Y, Z amounts of compliance testing? So for us, it's not as simple as going, you know what, that's a cool idea, let's make it. We have those. We have those all day, every day amongst our team of, let's say, 8 product developers and another 4 or 5 marketing guys and another, let's say, 3 or 4 execs. So 15 people every day come up with multiple ideas, of which a high percentage never come to fruition because of factors to do with being a big organization, the compliance testing, the licensing, the will it sell enough? Is that a cool idea? Or is that a cool idea that will sell enough to justify what we have involved in it financially in terms of compliance testing, development, stocking, product support, advertising, marketing, all of that stuff we have to factor in. So, yeah, it's a lot of stuff that people don't understand. I get it all the time as well. People come up to me and say, why don't you guys make anything cool? Why don't you make anything exciting? And we're like, we try to, but we have to be balanced. We have to balance between exciting and cool, profitable, marketable, sellable in the mass market. So yeah, it's something that I really, it still fascinates me. I talk about it for hours, particularly when people come up to me at an event and say, you guys just make the same stuff all the time. We're like, look, there's a reason why we make what we do. We don't just sit there and go, we want to do the same stuff all the time, or we don't want to make a really cool, interesting, diverse project. But if it gets to a stage where we go, okay, this is cool, this is amazing, this is diverse, we'd love to make it, but there's a 20% licensing fee, or there's 8 components that have to go through compliance, or this is a very product-centric or polarizing subject matter, say, or appealing in Germany, so we make a very specific German airplane, doesn't work for us as a global company. So yeah, it's a subject I could talk for hours, as you can probably gather about.
Well, speaking of cool products from Horizon and from Hangar 9, one of the latest releases is the Aermacchi MB-339, right? Can you talk a bit about how that happened? How did it go from idea to release?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about that one. Following on from the spiel I've just given you about making stuff and the complications and the complexities of making stuff, sometimes some swim through the gaps. Sometimes you can pitch things just correctly at the right time, at the right place. And yeah, the MB was one of those. It's no secret, I have been involved in the jet scene now from about late 1998, 99, and I think it's what a lot of people will know me for. I fly all RC, I really do. I try and do every aspect, but I guess my most highest profile, well-known segment is the jet world. And when I joined Horizon, I came in thinking a little bit selfishly, a little bit big-headedly almost, that the products could evolve around me. Learned very quickly that can't. It's not that company. We're in it to make money and make business. And yeah, with that in mind, I was like, I still had this little burning sensation in the back of my brain that I'd like to get more people doing more jets. I'd worked very closely with a gentleman named Alan Kardash in the UK from about 90, No, about 2000, I developed with him all of the Boomerang series of jets and enjoyed that a lot. Enjoyed being involved in getting a lot of people started in jets that wouldn't necessarily be in the jet world. Alan himself was one of those. I remember Alan coming to me and he couldn't fly the jets at the time, and I'd ran out of ideas. We didn't have that much choice in the early 2000s, and he went away and banged together the first Boomerang out of an old set of Giles 202 wings. And yeah, it started from there. I came with that idea to Horizon, saying, "Look, I've done it. I've worked with this guy. We've taken a brand, a subject that wasn't necessarily accepted within the jet scene, but developed it into a brand that sold better than I think any other jets ever sold." So with that in mind, I'd like to make a jet for Horizon. Everyone assumed I wanted to make some super duper composite high end sport jet, which ultimately I do. But from a business point of view, I wanted to make what I pitched, my first pitch to my first boss at the time was, I want to make an everyman jet. I want to make jets accessible to pretty much anyone that's, invested enough into like a 60 or 90 size warbird or a 2 meter pattern plane, break down the barriers and give them no excuse why not to, go into jets. And turbine prices were coming down, retracts prices were coming down, and we were working with a vendor at the time. I was working with a vendor at the time on Horizon, Hangar 9, that were making some really interesting stuff. And I took one of their subject matters and I booked it out of stock. This is a product that we were distributing at the time. I took it out of stock, assembled it briefly, and took it into one of our early brand meetings, our Hangar 9 brainstorming meetings, and I put it on a table. And I was like, the guy's like, "What? Why is this in here?" And I said, "Look, this factory can make this. This at the time was EDF, but there's no reason why that EDF couldn't be replaced with a turbine." And started the ball rolling from there. Went back to the factory, and the factory like, "We've never built a turbine before." And I'm like, "Look, don't worry, you're 90% of the way there with this product, with some development in terms of structural, internal structure, structural load bearing, so forth, and some moving around for things like fuel and what have you. This could be a turbine airplane." So, yeah, that was 2017. I've been at Horizon for just about 2 years, and I got the green light there. And it was a very different company then. We hadn't bought Hobbico. We were still in the old building. We hadn't had the merger. I was super lucky with my boss at the time. Was very proactive, jet flyer, RC flyer, and he said, "Look, I have faith in you. If you want to do it, do it." And that's when the ball started rolling. 2017, I got the first sample in, I was looking at my pictures the other day, 2018, early, I think January 2018. And yeah, it started from there. And the idea was that it would be on the market for 2019. And it just kept hitting roadblocks. The project hit roadblock after roadblock. Some internal, some that we had pushback from those within the company that were like, "We don't make turbines. We can't support turbines." And that was one of them. We hit COVID, obviously. That was a good 2 year delay, longer than normal because longer than our Chinese vendors, because COVID hit Vietnam really, really hard. They shut down Saigon completely. It was under military curfew at one point, so we were getting nothing out, and that project was at that stage was pretty much ready to go to the final rounds. And then compliance. That's where I found out about compliance testing on electric retracts. We had them made. The first 200 or so were made, ready to go. I was super happy. I was super pumped. And then a conversation came up and said, "You compliance tested it, right?" And I was like, "No, it's not a bind and fly. It's got no electric motor, no receiver, no lights." And they're like, "No, but it's got electric retracts." So that delayed it by at least another 7 or 8 months. So it's been a very longer than normal, drawn out process. Super rewarding. It's always fun bringing a new product to market. Even if it's like the Ultra Stick behind me, It's a pretty conventional, boring aeroplane, but it's still that release day is fun. The MB-339 was like that little bit extra, being our first proper turbine. And as it worked out, things just fell into place as well. You know, the King Tech deal came up almost last minute, last 2 or 3 months. We moved the mountains enough, moved the goalposts enough that we could actually offer combos. So yeah, we ended up with a Horizon jet and a partnership with King Tech where we could combo up and get a lot of people started pretty much with the entire package. So yeah, it's been good.
It seems like a lot of people were really, really excited when they saw the original announcement, right? I think it seems like a pretty big deal for Hangar 9, their first jet, but it also seems to be something pretty exciting for those people looking for that first jet, right? I think getting into the jet scene is always a bit intimidating, partly because high cost, partly because it's a bit different technologies than what people are used to, whether it's with electric or gas. So I think having that coming from Hangar 9, where people are more used to those maybe smaller, more approachable airplanes, uh, puts people a bit at ease.
Yeah, I mean that like I say, every man was always my pitch. The reason why I chose the MB-339 as well. I've said this a number of times to a number of people. You look at the shape of a 339; it's familiar. It's straightforward. There's nothing funky. There's no swept back or swept forward canard. I mean, I say this a lot. If you took the engine out of the middle of a 339 and put a 60 sized electric motor in the front, it would just be your everyday sport airplane. And that was big reason for choosing the 339. Long straight wing, long tail moment arm, decent tail area. It makes a good straightforward aeroplane. Doesn't have to be but ugly. You know, if I say anything from my time as developing boomerangs, Alan and I always used to sort of clash, and I'd like, can we not make something that looks more pretty, more conventional? But he was very much of a mindset of function rather than form. The vendor we chose meant that we could get the price point below $2,000 for the airplane, so that was important for me. Construction, no fancy composites, no exotic materials, so it's stuff that people were used to. I mean, literally, my first scope was I remember I just finished the Ultra Stick 30cc design, and I was like, how do I make this airplane turbine capable, but still appealing enough for those that want to get into jets visually, that it's not heinously ugly. So, yeah. And then the big thing I think has really sort of not surprised me, but it clicks into place is the familiarity of people going with a big company. People like to go, okay, I trust Horizon. I know there's a level of support with Horizon, so I'm not just out on my own. It's not going to come. A lot of airplanes do a box with no manual. There's going to be product support. There's going to be a 100-page manual in 3 different languages. There's going to be spare parts and so forth. So yeah, I think it all just fell into place for that airplane, and I'm super happy to be a small part of it.
Yeah, and I think the other big part of it probably is affordability, right? Within the expensive prices that pretty much every jet has, I believe the price of the whole kit, even if you go for the one that comes with servos with turbine, is relatively contained, right?
My analogy that I use quite often as well, because obviously talking about this airplane a lot, but in the same day that we released the MB-339 combo, I bought a replacement undercarriage for one of my scale jets, and the undercarriage for this scale jet was more expensive than the complete MB-339 package, plain undercarriage, turbine, receiver, battery, everything. So yeah, it's a very, very good price point. I'm never going to use the word cheap because it's not inexpensive. I use relatively good ROI, a return on investment, is something that I use quite often. For sub $4,000, you get a lot for your money. I'm never going to be flippant and say, oh, that's cheap. But in jet terms, it's incredibly well priced.
This is obviously a great option for somebody that is just trying to get into jets as their first jet. As somebody that has flown all kinds of jets by now, how do you feel about this jet for somebody that has experience and is just looking for anyone affordable, simpler jet to add to their to their hangar? How does it fit on that?
It's so weird because I'm so close to the project and I'm so saturated in the project. It still sort of humbles me and surprises me when I see people who aren't raw beginners. For example, they're just starting to filter now to events where I see them flying and I see them on Facebook and so forth. And it's just my baby, so I keep a close eye on it. And yeah, it's been super super cool watching people who I think, why do you have one? You've got like a $25,000 Compath MiG 17 there, and you're flying my little $1,600 MB-339 and engaging with those people. It is, they say, look, it's straightforward, it's simple, it's low risk, it's a pure flying airplane. I'm so easy to. I have a saying at work: never ask a product developer how his aeroplane flies. It's like everybody's baby's beautiful. Nobody comes out and says, my baby's ugly. So. I'm the same with airplanes. I try and stay humble and go, okay, why? Why do you like it? And they're like, yeah, it's a straightforward airplane that I can throw in the car. I've got low investment in. It's got a very, very wide flight envelope. I mean, it's never going to set the world on fire top end speed wise, but slow end speed's incredible. It's pattern-esque in the layout. It's conventional layout, so it aerobats very well, smoothly. It's pretty pure, no mixing and so forth. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those planes that you can throw in the car and fly every day. And at the time when I first scoped it, another one of the things that I pitched to my bosses, to my teammates, was I saw at the time, it was right when the first generation of foam turbine airplanes were hitting the market, and I had one. I got one for myself and played with it, and I could see very quickly that as great as they were, as great as they are, the longevity wasn't there. The foam and kerosene or diesel thing was never going to be a good thing for longevity. And I saw people having these turbines, the expensive, the core item, and what were they going to do with it thereafter? And I'm seeing that now. Two people just today that I spoke to who have taken turbines out of their foam airplanes. They say, this is my replacement for my X, Y, or Z foam airplane that I just used to throw in the car. And, the days that it was crosswind or the days that I was flying at my short grass strip, I take the 339 out now. So, yeah, that's been interesting to watch that.
Switching topics a little bit, are you still managing the Horizon Hobby Air Team?
Yeah, that's my primary role. That's the role that I was actually employed to do when the job offer came in to move from England to America. There was no talk of product development. That was another long story, which we can get into if you want. But just focusing on the team staff, yeah, team is what I was employed to do, what I came here to do, and it's hard to say it's my primary passion. It should be my primary passion. They're about level at the moment, especially now that I'm in like my second or third year full-time managing the team. It's sort of steadied out now, and I've got my core nucleus team together who are, I wouldn't say running themselves, but they're pretty stable. And yeah, that takes up about 70% of my time.
Can you talk a bit about what it actually means to be a team pilot? I think that people tend to have a lot of misconceptions about this kind of stuff, about sponsorships. I would love to hear your thoughts about what makes a good team pilot. What does a sponsorship look like on both ends of the spectrum? I think people just think of sponsorships as, oh, I fly this thing and I just get free stuff, and I know there's much more to that. Can you speak to that?
Sure. Of course. So what's this? So many different layers, that question and the answers. So there's different layers. There's actual different stages of sponsorship. I have right now 4 levels of level 1, which are primo pilots, are high profile pilots, and this comes from the car world. We have also surface team. To put that into perspective, the air team is about 10% the size of the surface team. So we have 125 air team, which is encapsulated all air. I manage now, obviously, fixed wing, helicopter, no longer FPV, but the fixed wing and heli guys are 125. Surface is over 1,000. We have over 1,000 car, boat team guys, predominantly car. And they have a tiered structure and level one. So the very highest level of sponsorship is level 1A, and then B, and then C, and then D. And then we go to level two, which is the level where we are offering hefty discounts, say, to represent Horizon and the brands. So yeah, depending where you're at, depending what I see your value at, is where you'll come in and join. Most people will join at level two, which is the discounted level, and obviously I speak to every team guy that I take on, and every team guy that is on the levels. We have a private chat group, we have emails and so forth, and I explain to them, we start at level two. You'll get very, very good discount, a very attractive discount on anything you buy within the brands. And then depending on your return is where you will settle in the tiers. And most pilots are level two. Most pilots are happy at level two. Some of those that will go and put in a lot of extra work, give a lot of extra return, will move up to the level ones. And in terms of work and returns, they can be different for each pilot. Some pilots obviously have the profile. Some pilots have the stage name, if you like, or the prowess or the presence or the acknowledgement within the hobby that they do so much at events, and they are, really, really gifted pilots, that will draw a lot of attention. Other pilots, other team guys, will do a lot behind the scenes, who aren't necessarily the highest profile pilots, but they'll do a lot of event reports. They'll do a lot of customer support. They'll do a lot of beta testing. I have level one pilots who I imagine a lot of your listeners have never even heard of, but they're still level one pilots, because behind the scenes, they're doing tons of support. They're giving me loads of content. They're out at events every weekend, and those events, can range from the international events that, say, the likes of Jace or myself will do, right down to club level. To me, I class them all as events. My goal, whenever I get a new team member, is what's involved in being a team member. What do I expect, or what do I hope for? And primary for me is always the same. It's the promotion of the hobby first. Because to me, if you promote the hobby, and you promote the hobby really well, the promotion of Horizon will then follow, because it's obvious. You're dressed in the team attire, you're holding a Spectrum radio, you're flying a Hangar 9 aeroplane, whilst using a DLE engine, so forth. All of our brands, that will come. To me, I want people, my team guys, to be promoting the hobby first, and that's what I've got. I've got a bunch of team guys who aren't necessarily superstars in a conventional YouTube or Facebook or magazine way, but they're superstars to me because every weekend I see them at a field doing buddy box training, or every weekend they're hosting an event, or every weekend they're organizing event donations for us to support an event that isn't necessarily getting the press or the coverage, but it's promoting the hobby. So yeah, it's a fun, really fun part of my job, very rewarding. Demanding. It's 125 egos, of which I'm one. I get it. We're out there. We're egotistical creatures. We're flying in front of crowds. We're flying in front of even small club events. We're doing it because we love showing off. So managing that many egos can be a challenge at times. But most of the time, with the team that I've got right now, it's very, very easy. I'm always humbled, always sort of flattered when people come to me and say, your team guy. And it is every week. I've got 3 emails right now in this screen right here. 3 different emails from Hawaii, one from Arizona, and one from an event locally up in Indiana, which are individuals, randoms. 2 of them I've never even heard of before, reaching out to me and saying, your team guy did this. Your team guy helped me. Your team guy helped this event. And that's like super, super cool part of my job. So yeah, it's very high reward.
I really like that idea of just focus on promoting the hobby first, and then other things will just come. We were speaking before about the 339 and kind of good jets to get started in the jet scene, and relatively affordable jets. One of the more sexy jets I've seen you fly lately is the Elite Aerosports BDX. It seems like you've been having a lot of fun with that one. I've seen you both in Europe and here in the US. Can you talk a bit about that one?
Yeah, I'd love to talk a lot about that airplane, and it's an interesting airplane to me for a number of reasons. primarily because of how well it flies. Secondary because of how polarizing it's been. When it first released, it was definitely a shape that not everyone loved, and I got that. I remember seeing it. I work. I'm friends with the guys from Elite. Scott Marr had that rendering for the BDX. It came from a conversation probably about 4 or 5 years ago when I was saying to him, look, to me, it would be cool to make a jet that has some connection to the full size world, but is a metamorphosis or a development or an evolution. So when he first had the rendering drawn, I loved it straight away. You know, I'm a big fan of the BD5. At that time, I'd just flown a friend of mine in California, and he bought Gurno Brookman's big BD5. I'd just flown that, and I was like, my gosh, if you could make this into a sport plane with a few tweaks, a few adjustments. So yeah, I was all over it, and I get it. When it was first shown around, it was like a 50-50. We use this word at work all the time, which is polarizing, which basically means one person loves it, another person hates it, which isn't necessarily the best way to go in terms of volume. You know, we're always looking for projects at work that tick loads of boxes. And one of the boxes is, we'd rather everybody just liked it than 50% of the people loved it and 50% of the people hated it, because it means those people that hated it aren't going to buy it. You know, they hate the subject matter. If they just like it, great. You know, we use the timber. Timber is a great line, you know, that shows that up well. That it was a middle of the road vanilla project that sold very, very well. BDX wasn't that. BDX was one of those ones you either love it or you hate it. So I was a little bit worried when it first released, and sales represented that. It was slow out of the gate. You know, from the get-go, I was probably emotionally biased. I loved it. But now it's probably in its third year now. It's amazing. We were joking about it just at this last event, the guys from Elite and I had a chuckle because we had multiple cases where people, when the plane was first released, were like, nope, hate it. You're never seeing me. That's disgusting. It's vile. Hate. Never seeing one of those in my stable and in my trailer. Here they are, best sport jet I've ever flown. So that's been interesting watching that. From a pilot's point of view, it actually worries me a little bit. It concerns me, only in the sense that I've had a lot of sport jets, you know, more than I can possibly remember. And every time I have a sport jet, I go, yeah, that's my favorite sport jet. That's the best sport jet. But there's always something where I go, that could be better. Right now, the place that I'm at right now in terms of my thumbs, my ability, my desires, what I want to do, I can't see what I could evolve the BDX to do better. And that concerns me, because I'm like, that means I'm stuck with this jet for the rest of my life, you know. So hopefully I've got a few years left flying. I can't see one. I'm like, you know, I'm on my fifth BDX, including the small one, the XS, and every time I come to get a new sport jet, I'm like, yeah, you know, it's time. I'm in a fortunate position that I can buy stuff and fly it and sell it and keep the fleet moving, keep it solvent, keep it liquid. I can't see the next sport jet on my horizon, and simply because the BDX fits what I do so well. I love it. As I say, I've always loved the shape. Its capability is perfect. It's the best blend of speeds, both speeds, top end and low end. You know, when people ask me to summarize it, I'm like, it's got the slow speed handling of the Havoc, which I loved, but it always left me wanting about high speed. And it's got the high speed handling of, say, the Picaro, which I loved, but I always flew the Picaro thinking, if only it did the slow speed as well as the Havoc. It's got enough side area that it's really good on knife edge maneuvers, really good on rolling maneuvers. It's strong enough that it will take everything I throw at it. You know, it's not indestructible by any means, but I'm sort of past that time in my life where I want to fly jets right up to the point of they blow up. So yeah, I go back to that term ticking boxes. You know, I always have these imaginary boxes in my head of what does it do really well, and I've never had one that's ticked so many boxes as the BDX does.
It looks really good. I personally am a fan of the style. It's pretty unique, but looks really cool. And they do a really good job with the color schemes too. I think that also helps a lot. Um, it also seems to be a pretty popular plane these days. I feel like I see a lot of BDXs. Maybe the other one that is a bit more popular as a sports jet is the Carve, the Rebel. What is the Pro or the Max is the other one that is also pretty popular. I think your son Zabi has been flying the Rebel Max a good amount too, right? Have you gotten a chance to try the Rebels?
Me, yeah, yeah. From before Calf had them, I worked with Mauro Perotti, who was the forefather, the designer, and the inventor of the Rebels. So yeah, I've worked with Mauro for a number of years, and done a bunch of flying on different size Rebels. Zav had the Max until literally last month. I just sold his Max to somebody, a friend of mine. It was their first jet, and he's Zav, my son, is now moving on to the Calf Diablo. Um, but yeah, they're a very, very capable sport jet, and that was an interesting one. Watching Calf take an already established brand, an already established product, which was the Rebels, and just absolutely transform the numbers that they've sold in. And yeah, it's testimony to how well they're made. I mean, Mauro, great designer, really, really ingenious guy, a good eye for form and function. But he was a one-man band in Italy. He couldn't keep up with the demands and production. I think Mauro would excuse me for saying was a little bit variable. The good and the bad went to Calf, and they're literally just churning those out at a very consistent level, super high quality. Their factory in Thailand puts out some great stuff. So yeah, it's been very nice watching that brand grow, and a lot of people cutting their teeth on them as first jets. Like I say, my son's Rebel Max actually ended up with a friend of mine who's down in Alabama, who is his first jet. We did an event 3 or 4 weekends ago where we got him. What did we do? We did 22 flights on the buddy box as his first jet, and he's now happily flying it as his first turbine airplane. He came from the glider background. He had no intention of getting a jet. He came to an event up here, a glider event, and I pitched the idea that it was soon time to let Xavi's Max go and move on to better things. And before we knew it, he was a jet guy.
You made him spend so much more money in the next couple of years.
It's cheap. Compared to the big high-end gliders one, it's yeah. That was one of the feedbacks he had. He was like, "I'm getting more adrenaline, more goosebumps flying this plane than I do my glider," which is, I mean, his big glider's twice what he paid for the Max. So yeah,
Wow, I did not know that you could go that high with gliders.
yeah, scary, scary, scary. They even me from a jet background. Every time I go to price a glider up, I'm like blown away. There's a company, Baldus, also Shamblek. Shamblek is like the king of gliders. He's got a glider that's like close to $20,000 and a 2-year waiting list. I'm like, wow, must be nice.
So you've been pretty much all over the world, right? All kinds of events, big and small. I would like to hear your thoughts about what makes a good event good, and what can organizers do to make sure that their events are successful. The reason I ask this is because I've seen some events where the organizers seem to put a lot of effort into getting them going, but they don't quite end up working out. They have like low attendance. They end up kind of like dying over time, whereas others are like huge successes. I think you just came from the Kentucky Jets, I believe, and that seemed to be like a really big event. So I'm kind of curious your thoughts about how how a good event can get to that point.
Yeah, interesting, expansive question. I've done events now for probably in about 20 or so different countries. I tried to work it out the other day, and from different levels. I've done events where they have been handful of pilots, 10 pilots, up to, say, Kentucky Jets last week was 180 pilots. Florida Jets is regularly 150. I've done, 200 plus pilot events, and yeah, they're all different. I think what makes them good and what makes them bad, or what makes them succeed and what makes them fail, is a lot to do with the people driving them. In fact, mostly to do with the people driving them. It takes a lot of effort. It's never a one-man affair. It's impossible to do it with a singular person. So teamwork is a big part of it. Seems like the easiest thing in the world. So, we get a bunch of guys together in a field and we'll fly to airplanes. It'll be great. There's so much that goes in behind the scenes. And I'm the club president now at Eli Club, and we do 4 events per year. I've done flightline organization events from all the way back in the England days, and yeah, it's a lot of balance. You have to be prepared to put a lot of time in pre the event and post the event and during the event. Um, but I guess the secret is knowing your customer, knowing who your customer is and what they want, and how you can get that to them, and keeping them happy. So, yeah, I mean, go back to the Eli thing. We have 4 different events per year. We just did the glider event. We have the jet event coming up. We have the RC Fest, which is like our broad everything goes event. And each one is different. How we set it up, how we market it, and how we support it. So, the glider guys are very self-sufficient. They want to be there. They want to get their money's worth. So they want to be there from dawn till dusk. And from the first day you open the gates to the last day, they will be there. The jet guys are, I wouldn't say any more or less maintenance. They just are a little bit more particular, a little bit more fussy what they want in terms of what the runway's like and what the storage is like. So, yeah, it's knowing who your customer base is. And then for me is understanding that they're going to have highs and lows. I've been to some events, say Kentucky. I was trying to work out. I think I've been there. It's got to be coming up to 20 times consecutively. I've not missed one. I used to come from England and do Kentucky Jets, but it's got to be over 15 years, between 15 and 20. And I've watched it. I've watched it climb. I've watched it dip. I've watched it climb. I've watched it have some amazing years. Like this year was a really good year. I've watched it have some disastrous years. Like 2 years ago, it rained for pretty much the entirety of the event. And that's when you sort of weed out of how good an event is, or how good an organizer, or how good the team are that are running that event, is when they have a bad year. You just sort of have to focus on it and pick up on it and just go, look, it happens. We're not going to let it be the end of the event, and actively market it. I mean, they're already marketing Kentucky Jets for 2024 right now. You'll start seeing Facebook stuff coming across all the way through the year. They drip feed it. They keep you hooked sort of thing and keep people wanting to come back. The organizer, Lewis Patton, who incidentally is a team guy, he has this sort of like boundless energy. Very, very rarely will you see Lewis angry or upset or, anything other than positive. And that makes a big difference because, and I know from his track record, is you can't expect to go through an event as the organizer without having dramas every day. And he's always positive. He's always has that, right, let's fix it. Let's get you sorted out. Let's move on. Let's not let it affect the event. I've seen the other way around. Some event organizers sort of get inundated and swamped and negative with it. And once the top guy is negative, once the top guy is down, it filters. The next guy is, then the attendees are, and then they start wondering, why am I doing this? Why am I spending minimum 100, often thousands and thousands of dollars by the time you've included travel, bookings in terms of tent space and so forth. Why am I spending thousands of dollars coming to an event that's got a negative vibe? So the vibe is definitely something that makes a big part of it. We've all been to the flying field some days where the vibe's a little bit off. Vice versa, we've been to the flying field where everything's just clicked. Everyone's, having a barbecue or flying until dusk or nighttime, just messing around. And you drive home going, yeah, that was a really cool day. That's what events should be like. You're trying to get that vibe encapsulated and get people hooked to come back and go, that was worthwhile spending my time and money. So, yeah, it's from the event organizer down, I'd say. And it starts long before the first day of the event. I mean, it's tough. I've never seen a really successful event that hasn't been marketed a long time before. So yeah, that's a few core things that come to mind when I think about what makes a good event.
What are the top 3 events that you would recommend everybody into model airplanes attend at least once?
An essential for me is Joe Knoll. It's, I thought, we were talking about a number of pilots and so forth. We're not even going to touch on that because it's ridiculously high number. The reason why I recommend Joe Knoll is that for me, it's like the Woodstock of RC. And the funny thing is, I don't always have a great time at Joe Knoll because I'm working. So I've never been to Joe Knoll as a civilian sort of thing. Even when I came from England, it was with the Horizon team, so there was an element of work going on. Despite that, I can see the appeal. I can see the attraction. There's no other event like it in the world that I know of. If there's one hiding away somewhere. And by that, I mean it's all encapsulated. It's all in one field. You know, you start at the top with the helicopters, you come down a little bit, you have the main show line, which has got jets and warbirds and, you know, World War One and all different stuff. And then you go to the electric line, and then you have control line, and then you have the float plane line, and then you have the craziness of the 3D line. And that runs almost 24 hours for minimum of 7 days. You know, you could come in to that gate on, say, the first Monday, work bloody hard to see everything you could, have the bare minimum of sleep and eat, and still not see everything in a week. That's the number one event for me. It's in a beautiful part of the US. Just, crazy. Almost too much. You know, if anything, I have to detox after Joe Knoll, and I only do 1 or 2 lines. But yeah, if I went there as a civilian and I wanted to see all the different flight lines, it'd kill me, but in a good way. So that's my number one event, and I like that event because it's one of the few events that has all the variety. So Kentucky Jets last week was a great event. I love it, but it's only jets, and you know, for me, I'm bored of jets after day 2 or 3. I want to try and do something different or see something different. And I'll try and reflect that in my event schedule. I'll try never to have 2 events in the same segment or the category back to back, because then I'm really burnt out. So that's what's really cool about Joe Knoll is you can go, I'm going to go watch some of the best 3D pilots in the world, and then I'm going to unplug and go and fly a timber on floats on the lake sort of thing. So yeah, that's Joe Knoll. Jet wise, it's a toss up for me between Kentucky Jets, and for me, I have a big whole spot in my heart for the Jet Power event in Germany. Unfortunately, not happening this year. Hopefully, it will come back. That to me will always hold a special place, because that was like the Joe Knoll of jets. That was the Mecca, the pilgrimage of where we would get people from all around the world coming to one event to share jets. And not only because of the flying of it, that was like almost secondary, really. It was because it was the biggest gathering of vendors. You know, we've got all of the big jet names together in one place at one time. That was a special event. And then on a completely different flip side of that, going back to what I said about diversity and variety, I do a glider event in Cumberland, which is on the east coast of America, on top of a hill. High Point Aviation is the club. Probably only a 50, if best, let's say 40, 50 pilot count event, but it's beautiful. Part of the US is absolutely stunning. It's mountainous. I go there in fall, in autumn, so the colors are changing. We're in this like I say, elevated position on top of a side of a mountain. We fly some beautiful airplanes at a beautiful flying field at a really nice time of year. It's the end of my season, so it's like my calm, come down, chill out, my tranquility zone after a season of stress and heat and, you know, running around with jet noise, battling around. We just go fly gliders for 3 or 4 days in one of the prettiest parts of the US that I go to, and fly pure machines. You know, I've always loved gliding, always will. So yeah, they're my 3 events of different segments.
Nice. Sounds like we have a couple of new events to add to the bucket list. Well, I'm gonna let you go. Thank you so much again, Ali, for taking the time. I think this was great.
No problem. Thanks for having me. If you want to do a follow-up, as you can probably gather, I'm never shy about talking about my hobby, my job. So yeah, if I can ever do it again, just ask. I'm happy to come up with some interesting questions. I love talking about work. I really, enjoy letting people in to stuff that I've experienced, and it's the nature of the hobby for me. I have a saying: I have the most useless skill set in the world if I don't share it. So yeah, if I can share anything, just let me know.
Yeah, I'm sure we will.
Take care.